Get out of that seat!
This is my seat.
Sir, you need to move, now.
Everybody off the aircraft! Move!
At the time, the flight attendant said, "Sir, you'll need to leave this seat." 3 people in the first-class cabin had already checked Marcus Reed's boarding pass. All 3 had seen the same thing. Seat 1C. First class. Confirmed. Marcus kept the pass in his hand anyway. He had learned a long time ago that paperwork sometimes had to survive longer than dignity. Cabin smelled faintly of coffee, leather, and the citrus cleaner airlines used before boarding. Outside the windows, rain streaked across the glass at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Ground crews in reflective vests moved beneath the wing while passengers settled into wide cream seats and pretended not to watch what was happening in row 1. Marcus was 39, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, dressed in a dark wool coat over a plain blue shirt. Nothing about him looked careless. Nothing about him looked threatening. He looked tired. That was because he had been awake since 4:15 that morning, packing lunch for his 11-year-old daughter, Maya, before dropping her at his sister's house. Maya had stood in the doorway, holding the lunch bag he made her take even though Aunt Denise had food. "Text me when you land." "I always do. You forgot last time. I was 10 minutes late. That still counts." Marcus had smiled, then Maya had pointed at him with the solemn authority only children could invent. 10 minutes is how people start disappearing in movies. That memory sat close now. His phone lay face down on the tray beside him. He had promised to text her from the gate in Boston. First, apparently, he had to convince an airline that the seat printed on his ticket belonged to him. Across the aisle, a white man in his early 60s stood beside seat 1D with one hand resting on the headrest. His name was Charles Whitmore. Marcus knew because Charles had introduced himself to the crew before saying a word to Marcus. He wore a camel coat, a navy cashmere scarf, and the expression of a man irritated by an error someone else should fix. "I've sat in 1C on this route for 7 years, Charles said. The senior flight attendant, Rebecca Sloan, nodded as if that settled something. Marcus looked from Charles to Rebecca. "His boarding pass says 2A. Rebecca pressed her lips together. "I understand. Then I'm not sure what the problem is." Her smile disappeared. "There are service considerations that don't always appear on a boarding pass." Marcus glanced at the tablet in her hand. "Does mine appear on it?" Rebecca hesitated. "Yes. Does it say 1C? Another pause. "Yes." A passenger behind them shifted in his seat. Someone else stopped typing. Marcus noticed the silence spreading, but he didn't turn around. He had no interest in performing for strangers. Charles gave a short laugh. "For God's sake, I'm not asking him to sit in economy." Marcus looked at him. "No one said you were. I'm saying 2A is also first class. Then you should like it." The man in row 2 covered a smile with his hand. "Ella." Charles's face tightened. Rebecca stepped closer to Marcus. "Mr. Reed, we are trying to resolve this without delaying departure." Marcus felt the familiar trick arrive. The problem had changed names. A minute earlier, Charles wanted his seat. Now Marcus was delaying a plane. He picked up his boarding pass and held it toward Rebecca again. "I boarded when my group was called. I put my bag away. I sat in the seat I paid for. I haven't delayed anything." Rebecca lowered her voice. "Mr. Whitmore is one of our invitation-level passengers." Marcus looked at Charles, then back at her. "And what level am I? That isn't what I meant." "What did you mean?" Rebecca's eyes hardened. For the first time, Marcus saw anger underneath the professionalism, not because he had insulted her, because he had made her explain herself. Charles removed his scarf and folded it over one arm. "This is getting ridiculous," Marcus almost agreed. Instead, he glanced toward the window. Rain tracked down the glass in thin lines. Beyond it sat the gray morning, the runway lights, the aircraft tug waiting beneath the nose. He was supposed to be in Boston by noon for a meeting he had spent 11 months preparing for. Not a sales pitch, not an interview, a federal safety review. Marcus worked as a structural systems engineer for Halcyon Aerospace, where he led a team evaluating emergency cabin systems for a new generation of commercial aircraft. The meeting in Boston would determine whether one of Halcyon's redesigned evacuation systems moved into final certification testing. He understood aircraft cabins better than anyone standing over him knew. He also understood something else. People made bad decisions faster when they believed nothing important was watching. Rebecca tapped her tablet. "Mr. Reed, I'm giving you a direct crew instruction to relocate to 2A. Marcus turned toward her. "For what operational reason?" Rebecca blinked. Charles looked annoyed again. Marcus continued. Weight distribution? No. Equipment issue? No. Seat malfunction? No. Safety requirement? Rebecca's jaw tightened. Then what is the operational reason? She did not answer. A woman seated in 2C finally spoke. There isn't one. Rebecca turned. Mom, please allow us to handle this. I am allowing you, the woman said. I'm also listening. Charles sighed loudly. This is exactly why flying has become unbearable. Marcus looked down at his phone. A new message waited on the lock screen. Maya, did you get your fancy seat? For the first time that morning, Marcus smiled. He typed, apparently everybody likes my fancy seat. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then vanished. Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket. Rebecca stepped away. I'm getting the purser. Please do. She stopped. Maybe she had expected resistance. Maybe she had expected anger. What she got instead seemed to unsettle her more. Marcus placed his boarding pass flat on the tray. Charles stared at it, seat 1C. Black ink on white paper. Simple, undramatic. True. 2 minutes later, another uniformed employee entered the cabin. And another. At the aircraft door, a gate supervisor appeared carrying a radio. Marcus noticed the shift immediately. This was no longer about finding Charles Whitmore a preferred seat. Someone had decided Marcus himself was the problem, and 5 minutes later, nobody in first class would be sitting anywhere. The man who came down the aisle wore a navy vest with a silver nameplate. Daniel Cross, in-flight service manager. He stopped beside Rebecca, listened while she spoke in a low voice, then looked at Marcus. Not at the boarding pass. At Marcus, that small choice landed harder than Marcus expected. Rebecca finished with, he's refusing a reasonable seat reassignment. Marcus sat back. Daniel nodded once. Mr. Reed, I'm Daniel Cross. Understand we have a seating issue. No, Marcus said. You have a passenger preference issue. Charles Whitmore let out a dry laugh. Daniel ignored him. Mr. Whitmore has a long-standing accommodation on this route. His assigned seat is 2A. I'm aware. Then there's nothing left to solve. Daniel's expression tightened. He had the composed face of someone used to bringing situations back under control. Late 40s, close-cropped gray at the temples. No wasted movements. Marcus knew the type. Competent people could still make terrible decisions once their pride became part of the problem. Daniel leaned slightly toward him. Airlines occasionally reassign seats for operational reasons. Marcus nodded. You do? Then you understand. I understand operational reasons. Daniel waited. Marcus pointed toward the boarding pass. Give me one. Daniel's eyes shifted to Rebecca. She looked away. Charles stepped closer. This is insane. I have a call in Boston at noon. Marcus turned toward him. So do I. Charles stared at him as if Marcus had violated some private rule by also having somewhere important to be. Then Charles looked back at Daniel. I spend more than $60,000 a year with this airline. The woman in 2C made a quiet sound through her nose. Marcus heard it. Daniel did too. His cheeks colored. Mr. Whitmore, please let me handle this. Charles backed off half a step. Not much. Daniel returned his attention to Marcus. We are offering you the same cabin, same service, same arrival time. We can also add 25,000 loyalty miles to your account. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. There it was, a price. They had decided his right to keep what he bought could be converted into points. No. Daniel's brows drew together. Why not? Marcus looked at him. Because I bought 1C, that seat has no material difference from 2A. Then Mr. Whitmore can take 2A. A man in 3D laughed before catching himself. Charles spun around. This isn't funny. No, the man said. It really isn't. The mood in the cabin changed. Dramatically. People simply stopped pretending not to care. A woman near row 4 held her phone low against her chest, camera facing forward. The man in 3D had folded his newspaper completely. Someone behind, Marcus whispered. They already verified the ticket. Daniel saw all of it. That made him more rigid. I need you to cooperate. Marcus hated the word. Not because cooperation was bad, because it had become a substitute for surrender. He looked toward the open aircraft door. The gate supervisor was still there now, speaking into a radio. Marcus could hear fragments. Boarding, hold. Row 1. Need operations. He checked his watch. 8:42 a.m. The certification meeting in Boston began at 12:30. He had built in enough time for a delay. Not enough time for nonsense. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his sister, Denise. Maya forgot her science folder. Found it under the couch. I've got it. Stop worrying. Marcus almost smiled. He had not told Denise he was worrying. She knew anyway. Their mother used to say Marcus carried worry like other people carried wallets, always close, always checking it. He slipped the phone away. Daniel was still standing there. "Mr. Reed?" Marcus looked up. "I'll ask once more. Is this reassignment connected to safety, aircraft balance, a broken seat, disability accommodation, or crew necessity?" Daniel's face changed. Just slightly. Marcus had used the right categories, not customer service language, operational language. Rebecca noticed it too. "Are you in aviation?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "Yes." Charles scoffed. "What does that have to do with anything?" Marcus did not answer. "Steve," Daniel's voice softened for the first time. "What do you do?" Marcus almost told him. "Lead structural systems engineer. Evacuation architecture. Certification review." He could have watched the whole room recalculate him. Instead, he said, "That has nothing to do with whether my ticket is valid." The woman in 2C nodded. "Exactly." Daniel exhaled through his nose. Marcus saw the moment he stopped trying to solve the original problem. Now he wanted to win. "Then I'm directing you to move to 2A. Marcus held his gaze. "And if I don't?" Daniel paused. Rebecca stared at the carpet. Charles folded his arms. "You refuse a crew instruction." Daniel said, "We may have to remove you from the aircraft." The cabin went quiet. Marcus felt his heartbeat once against his ribs. Hard. His first instinct was anger. His second was worse. Memory. He was 26 again, standing outside a downtown hotel ballroom after a security guard decided Marcus's conference badge looked borrowed. He remembered calling his father from the sidewalk. Not because he needed help. Because humiliation made adults reach backward for someone who once knew how to make the world feel ordinary. His father had listened, then said, "Don't spend your life proving you belong in rooms you already entered correctly." Marcus had understood the sentence only years later. He looked at Daniel Cross. "I'm not leaving my seat." Daniel gave a short nod, decision made. He stepped into the aisle and spoke toward the gate supervisor. "Call airport response." Rebecca's head snapped up. "Daniel." He ignored her. Marcus saw fear cross her face. Not concern for him. Concern for what the situation had become. At the aircraft door, the gate supervisor raised her radio. Then the cockpit door opened. A captain stepped out. Marcus looked at the 4 gold stripes on the man's shoulders, then passed him toward the forward galley. Something caught Marcus's eye. A thin ribbon of condensation along an overhead service panel. Too much condensation, wrong place. He watched one clear drop form at the edge of the panel. It trembled, then fell onto the carpet beside row 1. Marcus stopped listening to Charles. Another drop followed. His entire posture changed. Daniel noticed. "What?" Marcus stood. Rebecca flinched backward. Daniel raised a hand. "Sir, sit down." Marcus ignored him and looked toward the ceiling. "Has anyone reported water intrusion near the forward service bay?" Daniel stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pointed. A third drop hit the carpet. Then the cabin lights above row 2 flickered once. Marcus's anger disappeared. Professional instinct replaced it. "Stop boarding," he said. Daniel's face hardened again. "You don't give orders here." Marcus looked straight at the captain. "I'm not talking about the seat anymore." The captain followed Marcus's eyes toward the panel. The lights flickered a second time. This time, the captain saw it too. Captain Ellis Ward did not answer Marcus right away. He stepped beneath the service panel and looked up. Another drop formed along the seam. Then the reading lights over row 2 blinked off. They came back half a second later. Rebecca stopped breathing. Daniel Cross looked annoyed rather than alarmed. "It's probably condensation," he said. Marcus turned toward him. "Maybe." Daniel seemed surprised by the answer. Marcus pointed toward the damp patch spreading through the carpet near the forward galley. "But condensation doesn't explain the lighting fault." Captain Ward crouched and touched 2 fingers to the carpet. When he stood, his expression had changed. "Stop boarding." Daniel looked at him. "Captain, we're already behind." "I said stop boarding." The argument ended there. Rebecca moved toward the door. Outside, the gate supervisor raised a hand and blocked the next passenger entering the jet bridge. Charles Whitmore stared around the cabin. "Are we seriously delaying this flight because this man saw a water drop?" Marcus looked at him. "No one knows what it is yet." Charles spread his hands. "Then why are we panicking?" "We aren't." Marcus nodded toward Captain Ward. "He's checking." That difference mattered to Marcus. Checking was what should have happened with Seat 1C. See the fact. Verify it. Act from what the fact showed. Instead, 3 employees had confirmed his ticket and kept searching for a reason not to trust it. Captain Ward lifted the interphone. Maintenance to the aircraft. Forward galley. Priority. His tone changed on the last word. Daniel heard it too. He stepped away from Marcus and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since entering the cabin, he looked uncertain. A faint smell reached Marcus. Not smoke, something warmer. Plastic, perhaps, or insulation. He breathed through his nose once, then stopped. "Do you smell that?" Rebecca did. Her face tightened. Captain Ward turned toward the galley. One of the forward attendants opened a narrow service compartment, then immediately stepped back. "Captain." That one word removed the last trace of argument from Ward's face. "Close it." She did. "What did you see?" "Moisture inside." "I think." "You think?" "I didn't touch anything." "Good." Marcus stayed where he was. He knew enough to recognize danger. He also knew enough not to pretend he could identify something from 6 feet away inside an aircraft he did not maintain. Daniel glanced at him. "What exactly do you think is happening?" "I don't know." Daniel frowned. Marcus continued. "That's why maintenance needs to inspect it." The answer seemed to bother Daniel more than a confident diagnosis would have. Marcus understood why. People expected expertise to sound certain. Real expertise often knew where certainty stopped. Maintenance technicians entered less than 90 seconds later carrying tool bags and wearing orange safety vests. The older technician, whose badge read Luis Ortega, listened to the captain, then opened the service compartment. He did not touch anything at first. He aimed a flashlight inside. His expression changed. "Kill galley power." The forward attendant moved immediately. He stood up. "What now?" Luis ignored him. He crouched, examined the lower edge of the compartment, then spoke quietly to Captain Ward. Marcus caught only pieces. Supply fitting, tracking behind the panel. Connector looks heat-marked. Ward's jaw tightened. "Can we isolate it?" "Maybe. I want everyone off before we open this up." Charles heard that. And his face lost color. Daniel did too. For several seconds, no one moved. Then Captain Ward picked up the cabin handset. His voice came through every speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need everyone to leave the aircraft temporarily while maintenance addresses a technical issue in the forward cabin. Please take your phones and essential personal belongings. Leave larger luggage on board and follow crew instructions." Seatbelts began clicking. Questions rose immediately. Is there smoke? Are we changing planes? How long will this take? Is it safe? Captain Ward did not speculate. "We're deplaning as a precaution." Marcus checked the time. 8:47. 5 minutes had passed since Daniel threatened to remove him. The passenger in the cabin was being removed, including Charles Whitmore. The irony did not satisfy Marcus. That surprised him. He had imagined moments like this before. Someone treated him badly, then circumstance exposed them. In imagination, justice always felt clean. Reality felt messier. Charles was frightened. Rebecca looked sick. Oh no. Daniel stood stiffly near the galley, probably replaying the last 10 minutes and realizing the passenger he had nearly called security on had noticed something his crew had missed. None of that made Marcus feel victorious. People were still sitting beneath a wet electrical compartment. "Mr. Reed." Marcus turned. Captain Ward stood beside him. "How did you spot it?" Marcus reached into the overhead bin and pulled down his coat. "I work on cabin safety systems." Daniel looked at him sharply. Marcus saw the question forming and cut it off. "My job had nothing to do with my seat." Daniel said nothing. Marcus slipped his arms into his coat. Behind them, Luis called toward the captain. "We've got heat damage on the connector housing. I need the aircraft powered down before I go further." Ward nodded. "Do it." Rebecca began moving passengers toward the door. Charles reached seat 1C and stopped beside Marcus. For the first time all morning, he had no complaint ready. He looked toward the open service compartment, then at Marcus. "You knew that could happen?" "No, but you knew something was wrong." Marcus picked up his boarding pass from the tray table. "I noticed something worth checking." Charles stared at the paper in Marcus's hand. The same boarding pass everyone had already checked. His eyes dropped. Marcus walked toward the aircraft door. In the jet bridge, passengers clustered beneath fluorescent lights, while airport employees tried to keep the path clear. Behind Marcus, Daniel spoke urgently to Rebecca. "We need to document the sequence before anyone posts anything." Marcus stopped walking, not because he had heard his name, because of one word: sequence. 5 minutes earlier, Daniel had been willing to create a record describing Marcus as uncooperative. Now Daniel seemed worried about what the actual record would show. Marcus turned back toward the aircraft. Rebecca was looking directly at him. And for the first time that morning, she looked like she wanted to tell him something. Rebecca waited until the last passenger from first class stepped into the jet bridge. Then she looked at Marcus. "Can I speak with you for a second?" Daniel Cross turned sharply. "Rebecca!" She ignored him. Marcus stopped beside the aircraft door. Behind them, maintenance had begun shutting down sections of the cabin. The soft hum of ventilation faded. Without it, the aircraft felt strangely hollow. Rebecca lowered her voice. "When Daniel came on board, I told him your boarding pass was valid." Marcus said nothing. "I told him Mr. Whitmore was assigned to 2A. Daniel stepped closer. "This is not the place for an internal discussion." Rebecca looked at him. "You said he was refusing a seat correction." Daniel's face tightened. "He was refusing a crew instruction. That came later." Marcus watched the two of them. There it was. Not the disagreement itself. The order of events. Rebecca looked back at Marcus. "He asked me how I wanted the incident coded." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What did you say?" "I said passenger dispute." "And what did he put?" Rebecca hesitated. Daniel answered for her. "No report has been finalized." Marcus turned toward him. "That wasn't my question." Daniel's eyes hardened. The jet bridge around them was filling with displaced passengers. Gate agents tried to organize people into loose lines while everyone checked phones and asked for departure estimates. Charles Whitmore stood 20 feet away, speaking into his cell. "I don't care what the app says. Get somebody from operations." Marcus almost laughed. Charles still believed inconvenience responded to rank. Rebecca drew a breath. He selected disruptive passenger. Daniel's head snapped toward her. "You don't know what I selected. I saw the screen. That was a preliminary category." Marcus stared at Daniel. "You raised my voice?" "You never raised your voice," Rebecca said. Daniel looked at her again. Something passed between them. Fear, not Marcus's. Theirs. "Captain needs both of you inside." Daniel nodded immediately. Rebecca did not move. The gate agent continued. "Maintenance found more damage. Operations want statements before we decide whether this aircraft is going back into service." Daniel glanced toward Marcus, then at the passengers watching from the jet bridge. "Fine." He followed the agent inside. Rebecca stayed 1 second longer. "I should have stopped it earlier." Marcus looked at her. She seemed ready for forgiveness. He did not give her that. Not yet. "You had the correct seat assignments. I know. You knew why I was being moved." Rebecca looked down. "Yes. And you kept asking me anyway." Her eyes lifted. There was no defense in them now, only shame. Marcus slipped his boarding pass into his coat pocket. "Start there." He walked away. Not cruelly, not triumphantly. He simply had no interest in doing the emotional work for someone who had helped put him in that position. At the gate, a temporary announcement appeared on the monitors. "Flight 417 maintenance. Hold. No departure time." Marcus sat near the windows. Rain had thickened. Aircraft lights blurred through the wet glass, red and white smears moving across the ramp. His phone rang. "Denise," he answered. "You alive?" "Barely. I survived first class." "That bad?" "They evacuated the plane." A pause. "What maintenance issue?" "Marcus." "I'm fine. You always say that before giving me the part that makes me mad." He rubbed his forehead. He tried to move me out of my seat for another passenger. Silence. Denise knew him well enough not to interrupt. "They verified my ticket," he continued, "then asked me to move anyway. For what reason? Customer preference?" "That's not a reason." "I know. And you said no." "Yes. And somebody decided you were the problem." Marcus looked across the gate. Daniel was inside the aircraft. Rebecca stood near the doorway, arms folded tightly across herself. "Something like that," Denise exhaled. "You sound tired." "I am. Come home." Marcus closed his eyes. For 1 second, the offer felt good. No Boston, no review panel, no certification fight, no pretending this day belonged to him. Just home. Maya's science folder on the kitchen table. Denise complaining about his coffee, his own bed. "I can't. You can." "I have the review. Someone else can present." "No." That answer came too quickly. Denise caught it. "You've been preparing for this for almost a year." 11 months. Exactly. Marcus looked at the rain. "That's why I can't miss it." Denise went quiet, then softer, "and because if you leave now, it feels like they moved you after all." Marcus said nothing. His sister had always been good at finding the sentence he did not want to say. "Maybe," he admitted. "Maya's going to ask what happened." "I know. What are you going to tell her?" Marcus looked towards seat 1C through the open aircraft door. Deeply. From here, he could barely see it, just the top of the headrest. "I don't know yet. Figure that out before you decide what comes next." The call ended 2 minutes later. Marcus sat with that. What he would tell Maya, that mattered more. A maintenance supervisor emerged from the aircraft with Captain Ward. Ortega followed, carrying a removed electrical connector sealed in a clear evidence bag. The plastic around one side of the housing had browned. Marcus stood. Captain Ward saw him and walked over. "We're taking the aircraft out of service." A murmur moved through the gate area. Charles Whitmore lowered his phone. "Billy." Someone near the boarding lane cursed under his breath. Marcus looked at the connector. "How bad?" Water tracked from a galley supply fitting into the wiring channel. Connector showed thermal damage. "We're not gambling with it." Marcus nodded. "Good call." Ward studied him. "You saved us trouble." Marcus shook his head. "He's found the fault. You noticed the first sign." "That's different." Ward seemed to respect the distinction. He glanced toward the aircraft door. "Operations wants to speak with you." "About the maintenance issue?" Ward hesitated. "About everything." Marcus's stomach tightened. He had seen this before. Once an organization realized a mistake could become public, concern arrived wearing nicer clothes. They want to document what happened before boarding resumes on another aircraft. Marcus looked toward Daniel. "Who's writing the document?" Ward followed his gaze. "A small understanding. I'll make sure it isn't only him." 10 minutes later, passengers were told a replacement aircraft was being prepared at another gate. The cabin clearing had become more than an inconvenience. It had bought the airline time to repair the technical problem, time to move the passengers, time to decide what story the paperwork would tell. Marcus picked up his bag. As he turned toward the new gate, Rebecca approached him again. This time she carried her tablet. "I took screenshot." Marcus stopped. "Of what?" "The incident screen." Her hand trembled once before she steadied it. "The preliminary report Daniel started before maintenance arrived." Marcus looked at her. "What does it say?" Rebecca swallowed. Passenger became confrontational after being informed of required operational reassignment. Marcus felt every word settle. Required, operational, confrontational. 3 words, all false. Rebecca held the tablet closer to her chest, and it was time-stamped before he threatened removal. Marcus looked toward Daniel. He was speaking to an operations manager near the gate desk, calm face, controlled posture. Already explaining. Rebecca lowered her voice. "I think he was building the reason before he had one." Marcus stared at her. The seat dispute had just changed shape. It was no longer only about who had been asked to move. Now it was about whether someone had started rewriting the record while Marcus was still sitting there. The replacement aircraft was parked 3 gates away. Passengers began gathering their bags and moving through the terminal in a slow, irritated stream. The rain had eased, but the morning still pressed gray against the windows. The space stayed behind. So did Rebecca. The operations manager who approached them introduced herself as Helen Park, regional duty manager for North Star Atlantic, the fictional carrier operating Flight 41C. She looked to be in her early 50s. Short, dark hair, black trousers, no jacket. A radio clipped to her belt and reading glasses hanging from a cord around her neck. She did not begin with an apology. Marcus appreciated that. Apologies before facts often meant someone wanted the facts softened. "I've spoken with Captain Ward and maintenance," Helen said. "I also need statements from everyone involved in the seating dispute." Daniel Cross stood a few feet away. "I've already entered mine." Helen looked at him. "I know." Something in her tone made him go still. She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reed, would you come with me?" Marcus glanced toward the departure board. Replacement flight now showed 9:35. His margin was disappearing. "How long?" 10 minutes. 10. Helen nodded. "Not 20. They moved into a small operations room behind the gate desk. Bare walls, fluorescent lights. A table meant for paperwork, not comfort. Rebecca entered behind them. Daniel followed. Marcus sat opposite Helen. He placed his phone on the table and checked the time. 9:02. Helen opened a digital incident file. "Start from when you reached your seat." Marcus did. No speeches, no assumptions. He described seeing 1C on his boarding pass, sitting down, Charles arriving, Rebecca checking both assignments, the request that he relocate to 2A, Daniel's arrival. The loyalty mile offer, the threat of removal. Helen interrupted only for timestamps. "Did anyone tell you the seat was inoperative? No. Weight and balance issue? No. Medical need? No. Safety accommodation? No. Did Mr. Whitmore have a confirmed assignment for 1C? No. His pass showed 2A. Helen typed. Daniel shifted in his chair. He had a standing preference in his profile. Helen looked at him. A preference. Yes. Not a protected accommodation. No. Not a seat assignment. No. Helen resumed typing. The room went quiet except for the keys. Marcus watched Daniel. He had expected defensiveness. What he saw now was calculation. Daniel was already trying to determine how much of the original decision could still be defended. Helen turned to Rebecca. Did you verify both boarding passes? Yes. And after verification, did you continue asking Mr. Reed to move? Yes. Why? Rebecca looked at Daniel. Helen noticed. Answer for yourself. Rebecca rubbed one thumb against the edge of her tablet. Mr. Whitmore complained before boarding that his usual seat had changed. I knew he was a high-tier customer. His profile had service notes. Drink, preference notes. Drink, connection assistance, seating. Anything authorizing displacement of another confirmed passenger? No. Marcus stared at the table. There it was again, the whole morning reduced to a simple fact. No authorization, no operational need, no ambiguity. Helen looked at Daniel. When did you create the incident entry? Daniel crossed his arms. When it became clear Mr. Reed wasn't cooperating. Rebecca spoke before Marcus could. That was before you told him it could become a removal. Daniel turned toward her. That doesn't make the entry improper. Rebecca unlocked her tablet. The room changed. Helen stopped typing. Daniel's face emptied. Rebecca placed the tablet on the table and rotated it. Marcus saw the report for the first time. 0843-7 Contrary. Disruptive non-compliant passenger below it. Passenger became confrontational after notification of required operational seating reassignment. Refused crew direction. Escalation pending. Marcus read it twice. Not because it was complicated. Because it was so clean. That was what bothered him. No confusion, no messy notes. A complete version of events that had never happened. Helen looked at Daniel. What operational reassignment? Daniel leaned forward. Cabin service discretion. That isn't an operational reason. It can become one when a dispute affects boarding. Helen's expression barely moved. The dispute existed because your team tried to displace the confirmed passenger. Daniel's jaw tightened. We were attempting the lowest impact solution. Marcus finally spoke. Lowest impact on whom? Daniel looked at him. Marcus continued. Mr. Whitmore was already assigned a first-class seat. I was already seated in mine. Moving him to 2A required nothing except telling him to use his ticket. Daniel did not answer. Helen looked back at the report. Why does this say Mr. Reed became confrontational? Daniel exhaled. His questioning was becoming adversarial. Rebecca stared at him. He asked why he was being moved. He repeatedly challenged crew direction. Marcus felt heat rise in his neck. For the first time that morning, he came close to losing control. Not because Daniel had lied. Because Daniel had found professional language that made the lie sound reasonable. Marcus leaned forward. I asked whether the reason was weight balance, equipment, safety, disability accommodation, or crew necessity. Daniel said nothing. You answered none of those applied. Still nothing. Marcus's voice tightened. And you wrote operational reassignment anyway. Helen raised one hand. To silence Marcus, to keep the conversation from breaking apart. She turned to Rebecca. Is his account accurate? Yes. Daniel looked at her with open anger now. Rebecca held his gaze. Yes, she repeated. Helen removed her glasses. Daniel, step outside. He stared at her. Helen outside. For several seconds, Marcus thought he might refuse. And Daniel stood. The door closed behind him. Rebecca released a breath she had apparently been holding for 10 minutes. Helen looked at Marcus. This entry is going to be preserved. Good. Rebecca's screenshot will be attached. So will the original system version and revision history. Marcus looked at her. Revision history? Helen nodded. The system logs changes. That mattered. A screenshot showed what Rebecca had seen. The audit trail could show whether someone later tried to rewrite it. Marcus felt his anger cool into something more useful. When does that preservation happen? Helen reached for the desk phone. Now. She called the regional compliance desk and dictated the incident number. Marcus listened as she requested an administrative hold on the report, cabin crew notes, boarding records, seat assignment history, customer profile notes, and radio communications. No grand threat, no executive call. A process. That was what he had wanted from the beginning. Rebecca sat quietly beside him. When Helen finished, Marcus asked, "What about Whitmore? He'll be interviewed separately. Does he lose his status?" Helen paused. "Isn't my decision." Marcus nodded. Right answer. He did not want theatrical punishment. He wanted responsibility to follow authority. Helen closed the incident window. Daniel will not work the replacement flight. Rebecca looked up. And me? Helen studied her. You'll work it only if the captain accepts you and if Mr. Reed has no objection to your presence. Marcus immediately disliked that. He looked at Helen. That shouldn't be my decision. Helen seemed surprised. You were directly involved. Exactly. I shouldn't be deciding whether she works. Rebecca looked at him. Marcus continued. You supervise her. Captain Ward commands the flight. Make the decision you're supposed to make. Helen held his gaze for a moment. Then nodded. Fair. Rebecca's eyes dropped. Marcus could feel her embarrassment. Part of him wanted her removed. He admitted that to himself. Part of him wanted her to feel for one morning what it meant to have someone else decide whether she belonged in a place she had expected to occupy. The impulse embarrassed him, not because it was incomprehensible, because it was tempting. He stood. I need to make Boston. Helen checked the clock. The replacement aircraft should board in 12 minutes. Marcus picked up his phone. At the door, Rebecca spoke. Mr. Reed. He stopped. I'm going to give a complete statement. Marcus looked at her. If it costs me. He believed she meant it. He also knew meaning it now did not erase what she had done earlier. Then make it complete. He left the room. At the gate, Charles Whitmore stood near the window. For once he was alone. No crew clustered around him. No one offering solutions. When Marcus passed, Charles said, Reed. Marcus stopped. Charles looked toward the floor before meeting his eyes. I didn't ask them to remove you. Marcus considered him. No. Charles seemed relieved. Then Marcus added, you only asked them to make my seat yours. The relief disappeared. Charles rubbed his jaw. I've had 1C for years. You had a preference for 1C. Charles looked away. Marcus could have kept walking. Instead, he asked the question that had been bothering him since boarding. When Rebecca showed you my ticket, why didn't you take 2A? Charles opened his mouth. Marcus waited. Eventually, Charles said, I thought they'd sort it out. They did. Charles frowned. Marcus looked toward the replacement aircraft. They decided I was easier to move. For the first time, Charles did not argue. The boarding announcement sounded overhead. Marcus checked the updated seat assignment on his phone. C. Still his. As he joined the line, another message arrived from Denise. Maya wants to know if you won the seat war. Marcus stared at the screen. He typed slowly. Tell her there shouldn't have been a war. Then he boarded again. Marcus expected the second boarding to feel different. It didn't. Same narrow jet bridge, same smell of coffee and wet coats, same passengers looking at seat numbers, overhead bins, watches. Only the faces had changed. People recognized one another now. They had spent 40 minutes together inside a problem. Charles Whitmore boarded 3 passengers behind Marcus. His new assignment was 2A. No one announced it. No one needed to. Marcus put his bag overhead and sat in 1C. This time, nobody asked him to move. Captain Ward stood near the cockpit door while boarding resumed. When Marcus fastened his belt, Ward gave him a small nod, nothing theatrical. Marcus appreciated that, too. He was not on the replacement crew. Helen Park had decided to remove her from service pending a statement review. Marcus learned that only because a new flight attendant introduced herself before departure. Good morning, Mr. Reed. I'm Tasha Green. I'll be working the forward cabin. She said his name the way she said everyone else's. Hesitation. No extra warmth. No careful apology. For the first time that morning, Marcus felt normal. It lasted less than 5 minutes. Charles stopped beside row 1 before taking 2A. Can we talk? Marcus looked at him. Passengers were still boarding behind Charles, so Marcus pointed toward the empty aisle. Not here. Charles nodded and moved on. The cabin door closed at 9:38. Captain Ward announced a 27-minute ground delay for final paperwork and routing. Marcus checked the time. Boston was becoming tight. He opened his laptop and pulled up the certification deck. Slides appeared across the screen. Emergency egress timing. Isolation. Redundant power pathways. Cabin material heat tolerance. The irony was so obvious he almost resented it. His morning had already turned into a live demonstration of half the principles he planned to discuss. Small failure, ignored signal, improvised response, system escalation. Marcus deleted 2 sentences from his opening remarks. He sounded too polished now. Tasha stopped beside him. Coffee? Black, please. She poured it. No performance. He wanted to thank her for that, then realized how low the morning had set the bar. His phone buzzed. Halcyon Aerospace. Review panel, move to 1:15 p.m. due weather. Remote access available if needed. Marcus read the message twice. The pressure in his chest loosened, not gone, loosened. He would make it. Across the aisle, Charles watched him. Marcus pretended not to notice. Once the aircraft pushed back, Charles leaned toward him. "I owe you an apology." Marcus closed his laptop halfway. Charles looked uncomfortable. Marcus thought, then immediately disliked himself for thinking it. Charles rubbed his palms together. "I handled that badly. That's vague." Charles looked at him. Marcus waited. The plane paused in the taxi queue. Rain ticked against the windows. Charles tried again. "When I saw you in 1C, I assumed the airline had made a mistake." Marcus said nothing. "Yeah, I knew my pass said 2A. There it was, the harder sentence. Charles continued. "I thought my profile would override it." "Why?" "Because it has before." Marcus leaned back. That answer interested him more than the apology. "How many times?" Charles frowned. "I don't know, more than once. Yes. Did staff move other passengers?" Charles hesitated. "Sometimes." Marcus felt the story widen. Not dramatically, quietly. A preference note had not appeared from nowhere. Someone had taught Charles that insisting worked. Someone had built a practice around avoiding his complaints. "What kind of passengers?" Marcus asked. Charles stared at him. "I don't remember." Marcus believed that. That was part of the problem. The person moved remembered. The person accommodated often didn't. Charles lowered his voice. "I'm not saying that excuses what happened. It doesn't. I know." Marcus looked out the window. The aircraft moved forward another few yards. Charles spoke again. "I also didn't think they'd threaten to remove you." Marcus turned back. "Did you think they should stop?" Charles's face tightened. "What?" "When Rebecca confirmed my boarding pass." Charles said nothing. "When Daniel offered me miles." Still nothing. "When he called my refusal disruptive." Charles looked down. Marcus let the silence work. Finally, Charles said, "Earlier. That's not a time." "When she checked the tickets." Marcus nodded. That was honest enough. The aircraft reached the runway. Engines rose. Conversation ended beneath the sound. 20 minutes after takeoff, Marcus's phone connected to onboard Wi-Fi. An email waited from Helen Park. Preservation notice issued. Please retain your boarding pass and any messages related to Flight 417. Below that was something he had not expected. Preliminary audit identified 6-seat preference overrides involving Mr. Whitmore's profile in the last 14 months. Review is ongoing. Marcus read it again. 6. He looked across the aisle. Charles was asleep. Marcus did not feel vindicated. He felt uneasy. One sentence could be explained as bad judgment. This meant somebody had made bad judgment easier to repeat. He forwarded the email to his personal account and closed the screen. A moment later, another message arrived. This one from Maya. "Aunt Denise told me they evacuated everybody because you saw the broken thing. Does that mean you're a hero now?" He smiled despite himself. He typed, "No, it means I looked up." Maya replied almost immediately. "That sounds like something a hero says." Marcus laughed under his breath. Then he looked at the cabin ceiling, dry now, steady lights, no dripping panel. A functioning system could feel boring when everything worked. Marcus had spent his career trying to preserve that boredom. His phone buzzed again. "Helen, one more thing. The review found your incident category was changed at 9/11 after Daniel left the aircraft. Disruptive passenger was replaced with customer seating disagreement. The audit log preserved both versions." Marcus stared at the timestamp. 9/11. After Rebecca had shown the screenshot. After maintenance had found the fault. After people started asking questions. Someone had tried to clean the record. The original lie was bad. The correction made after exposure was worse. Marcus opened his laptop again. He no longer cared only about seat 1C. He wanted to know who had changed the file and who expected no one to notice. Marcus did not answer Helen immediately. He stared at the audit note until the letters stopped looking like words. Changed at 9/11. That timestamp bothered him more than the original report. At 8:43, Daniel could still claim bad judgment. Pressure. Pride. A rushed decision in a boarding cabin. At 9/11, the facts had already changed. The aircraft had been cleared. Maintenance had found heat damage. Rebecca had shown the screenshot. Helen had started asking questions. Someone had gone back into the file anyway. Marcus typed one sentence. "Who made the edit?" Helen replied 4 minutes later. "Working on access attribution. I'll update you when confirmed." Marcus closed the message. Across the aisle, Charles had woken and was staring at a half-finished cup of coffee. Marcus opened his certification presentation instead. He needed to get his mind back to Boston. The first slide now felt almost insulting. Sure, chance begin with small deviation. He had written that 3 months earlier. Force aircraft systems, not people. He changed the slide, become normal when no one corrects them. Better. His colleague Priya Nair messaged through the company chat. You still airborne? Yes. Landing 1202 if the weather cooperates. Panel pushed to 130. You're safe then. Heard your original aircraft got pulled. You okay? Marcus stared at the question. He could have said yes. Instead, long morning. Tell you later. That was closer to the truth. The flight landed at 12:07. Marcus texted Maya before the wheels had fully cleared the runway. Ended. Still not a hero. Her answer came before he reached the gate. Debatable. He smiled and put the phone away. Halcyon had sent a car, but Marcus canceled it and took the airport shuttle to the engineering campus. He needed 20 quiet minutes without anyone opening a door for him. Boston traffic moved under a washed-out sky. Wet pavement shone beneath bare trees, and the heater blew too hard against his shoes. Marcus watched buildings pass. For the first time since Atlanta, he allowed himself to feel what the morning had cost. Not the seat, not even the threat of removal. The worst part was how quickly he had adjusted. When Rebecca dismissed the boarding pass, he had known what tone to use. When Daniel recast his questions as confrontation, Marcus had known how still to keep his hands. When removal entered the conversation, he had already started planning what facts he would say on camera if security arrived. He had procedures for humiliation. That realization sat badly. His father had prepared him for moments like that. Marcus had done the same in quieter ways with Maya. Keep receipts. Know the address. Call me if an adult changes the rules. Never reach into your pocket suddenly if someone already thinks you're a problem. He hated that those lessons could sound like good parenting. At 1:18, he entered Halcyon's certification conference room. Priya met him at the door. She took one look at his face. You look terrible. Thank you. You're welcome. That helped. Normal insult. Normal colleague. Normal room. Marcus plugged in his laptop. 6 federal reviewers sat across the table with technical binders open in front of them. On the wall, a full-scale mock-up of Halcyon's new cabin power routing system showed the exact kind of concealed service channels Marcus had spent years studying. For 90 minutes, he disappeared into work. Connector isolation. Evacuation loads. Redundancy. Failure tolerances. No airline status. No seat number. No strangers deciding whether he belonged. Just questions with answers that could be tested. Near the end, one reviewer pointed to Marcus's revised slide. Small deviations become normal when no one corrects them. She tapped the page with her pen. That's stronger than the original. Priya looked at him. Marcus said, had a useful morning. The review ended at 3:04. Halcyon received approval to proceed into the final certification phase, subject to 2 minor design clarifications. 11 months of work. Marcus should have felt lighter. Instead, his phone was vibrating on the table. 3 missed calls from Helen Park. In voicemail. Marcus stepped into the hallway and called her back. She answered immediately. We confirmed the 9/11 edit. Marcus leaned against the wall. Daniel? No, that surprised him. Then who? A customer experience supervisor named Owen Price. Daniel called him from the gate after Rebecca showed the screenshot. Marcus went still. Helen continued. Owen had remote access to the report. He changed the category and removed the phrase required operational reassignment. Why? He says he was cleaning up an inaccurate preliminary entry. Marcus looked through the glass wall at Priya gathering binders inside the conference room. Did he document the correction? No. Did he preserve the original language in the narrative? No. Did he speak to me? No, Rebecca? No. Helen was silent for a moment. Then she said, There's more. Marcus closed his eyes. Of course there is. The 6 prior Whitmore seat overrides, 4 were handled by the same customer experience desk. Marcus opened his eyes. The problem had moved again. Not from one employee to another, from a cabin decision into a pattern. Helen continued. Reviewed the internal notes. Staff repeatedly used language like avoid escalation, protect premium relationship, and voluntary reseating preferred. Marcus stared at the gray Boston afternoon beyond the windows. Voluntary for whom? Helen did not answer. She did not need to. Marcus remembered Charles saying the airline had done this before. Now the shape was clearer. No secret conspiracy, no mastermind. Something more ordinary. A company had taught employees that the easiest customer to inconvenience was often the one least likely to cost them money. And somebody had decided Marcus looked easy. Helen's voice came back through the phone. Corporate compliance is opening a formal pattern review. Marcus rubbed a hand over his face. It happens to Daniel. Administrative leave pending findings. Rebecca? Still under review. Her cooperation is being documented. Owen access suspended. Marcus nodded slowly. Right authority, right process. No instant executions. No theatrical revenge. What do you need? From me? A recorded statement tomorrow. Marcus looked toward the conference room. Priya was waiting for him now. He thought of Maya asking whether he had won the seat war. No, he said. I'll give you one tonight. Helen paused. You don't have to. I know. Marcus picked up his bag. But if the record is what they tried to change, I want mine in it before anyone gets another chance. Helen scheduled the recorded statement for 7:30 that evening. Marcus took it from a small conference room at Halcyon because he did not want to wait until morning. Priya stayed long enough to hand him a sandwich, then left without asking questions. That helped too. The room emptied. Marcus set his boarding pass on the table beside his laptop. Seat 1C. The paper was slightly bent now from being folded and unfolded all day. Helen joined by video with a compliance investigator named Aaron Bell, a black attorney in his 40s with wireframe glasses and the deliberate patience of someone who understood that a clean record depended on boring questions. 6. Name, flight, gate, seat, time boarding began. Then he walked Marcus through every decision in order. Marcus kept his answers narrow. Rebecca checked the tickets. Charles wanted 1C. Rebecca asked Marcus to relocate. Daniel arrived. Daniel offered miles. Marcus refused. Daniel classified him as disruptive. Maintenance interrupted the escalation. No speeches, no speculation about motives. When Aaron asked whether Marcus believed race influenced what happened, Marcus paused. It was the first question that felt harder than the rest. Yes. Aaron waited. Marcus continued. But I can't tell you what was in anyone's head. What can you tell me? Marcus looked at the boarding pass. I can tell you whose ticket was treated as negotiable after both tickets were verified. Aaron nodded. I can tell you whose refusal was turned into a behavior problem. Another pause. And I can tell you Mr. Whitmore expected the airline to move me because the airline had rewarded that expectation before. Helen wrote something down. Aaron asked, Do you want disciplinary action against any specific employee? No. Helen looked up. Marcus continued. I want the company to determine responsibility based on what each person did. And what outcome do you want for yourself? Marcus had not prepared for that question. Refund? Miles? Written apology? He could imagine all of them. None felt large enough. None felt quite relevant. I want the report corrected. It will be. I want the original version preserved too. Aaron nodded. It already is. I want confirmation that my customer profile won't carry any disruptive passenger flag from this. Helen answered immediately. That flag has been blocked pending final closure. Marcus looked at her. Blocked or removed? Blocked for now. We don't delete investigative data until the review closes. Once the finding is final, the customer-facing flag can be removed while the audit record stays preserved. Marcus nodded. That distinction mattered. A clean record did not require pretending the bad one never existed. It required showing what happened to it. Aaron glanced at another screen. One last issue. We found 5 other passengers involved in the 6 Whitmore overrides. Marcus sat straighter. 5? One person was moved twice. Have you contacted them? We're starting. Marcus rubbed his thumb along the edge of the boarding pass. Were they all black? Aaron did not answer immediately. We don't have complete demographic data. We're not going to infer race from names or photographs. Marcus respected that. What do you know? 3 filed complaints after travel. Marcus looked up. Aaron continued. 2 complaints specifically alleged unequal treatment. Neither was escalated beyond customer recovery. Helen's expression changed when he said that. Pierce noticed. What does customer recovery mean? Helen answered. Miles, travel chill language, no pattern review? No. Why? Helen looked tired now, because each complaint was handled as an isolated service failure. Marcus leaned back. There it was, not hidden, not technically lost, separated. 6 small incidents filed into 6 small boxes. None dangerous alone. Together, they told a different story. Marcus thought about aircraft structures. A crack measured in millimeters could look harmless. A series of cracks in the same load path was something else entirely. Aaron must have seen something change in his face. "What are you thinking?" Marcus looked at him. "Your complaint system did the same thing Daniel did." Helen frowned. Marcus continued. "It changed the category. Neither of them interrupted. You had passengers saying they were treated unequally. The system called each one customer recovery. That made the incident small enough to close." Aaron leaned toward the camera. "That's a fair concern. It's more than a concern if the same profile keeps appearing." Helen nodded slowly. "You're expanding the review to the premium service exception process." Marcus glanced at the clock. 8:19. Maya would still be awake. He had promised to call. Aaron closed his notebook. "We have enough for tonight." Marcus reached toward the laptop, then stopped. "One more thing." Helen waited. "Don't turn Rebecca into the hero because she took the screenshot." Helen's face remained still. Still, Marcus continued. "She preserved something important. She also helped create the situation." "I understand. And don't turn Daniel into the whole problem because he's easy to point at." Aaron nodded. Marcus looked between them. "If 6 passengers were moved before me, then people learned this somewhere." The call ended at 8:26. You're sat alone for another minute. Then he called Maya. She answered from Denise's couch wearing oversized purple pajamas and one sock. "You won?" Marcus smiled. "The meeting went well." "No, the seat." He looked at the boarding pass. "I kept it." Maya grinned. "So you won." Marcus shook his head. 5 other people had the same kind of problem before me." Her smile faded. "Did they win?" "I don't know yet." Maya thought about that. Then she asked the question Marcus had been avoiding all day. "Did they do it because you're black?" He looked at his daughter on the screen. 7 years old. Old enough to notice. Too young for him to lie. I think race mattered." Maya went quiet. Marcus continued. "But what matters now is proving what happened, fixing the rules, and making sure the next person doesn't need my job or my seat number to be believed." She nodded slowly. Then she held up her science folder. "I found the project. Denise found the project. Details." Marcus laughed. When the call ended, he packed his laptop. Before leaving, he checked his email once more. A new message from Helen waited. "Corporate compliance authorized a system-wide hold on manual VIP seat overrides pending review. Effective tonight." Below it was another line. "All prior complaints involving the same exception code will be re-examined." Marcus read that twice. For the first time all day, something inside him eased, not because anyone had been fired, not because Charles had been embarrassed, because the next passenger might reach a confirmed seat and discover the rule meant what it said. Well, Marcus woke before his alarm. For a few seconds, he did not know why. Then he saw the folded boarding pass on the hotel desk. Atlanta came back all at once. Seat 1C. Charles standing in the aisle, Rebecca checking the tickets, Daniel choosing the word disruptive before Marcus had done anything except ask why. He sat on the edge of the bed and checked his phone. 6:11 a.m. 3 emails from North Star Atlantic. The first confirmed his customer profile had been cleared of any active behavioral flag. The second came from Helen Park. Formal review conference scheduled for 10 a.m. Eastern. Findings will be presented to involved employees before final action. Attend remotely but are not required. The third was from Aaron Bell. "We completed the initial comparison of prior override cases. Your concern about categorization was substantiated." Marcus read that sentence twice. Then he called Denise. She answered, sounding half awake. "If this is about your hotel coffee, I'm hanging up." "It's not." "Then somebody died." "Nobody died." "Good." Continue. Marcus walked to the window. Boston was pale under the early light. Delivery trucks moved through wet streets below. They finished the first review. Denise woke up properly. And they found the complaint process kept separating similar incidents. A pause. So the system worked exactly well enough not to notice itself failing. Marcus smiled. "Ill. That's annoyingly accurate. I learned from you." "No, you learned from Mom." "That too." He told her about the 10 o'clock conference. "You joining?" "I don't know." Denise was quiet for a moment. "What would you be joining for?" Marcus understood the question. To watch Daniel get punished? To hear Rebecca apologize? And to see Charles's profile stripped of special treatment. Those things had occupied more space in his imagination yesterday than he wanted to admit. "I want to hear what they fix." Then join for that. At 9:58, Marcus opened the video link from a Halcyon guest office. Helen appeared first. Aaron sat beside her in Atlanta. Daniel Cross joined from another room with an employee representative. Rebecca appeared separately. Owen Price, the supervisor who had edited the report, joined with a union representative. Charles was not on the call. Good. This was not theater for passengers. Helen began. We have completed the initial fact-finding phase for Flight 417 and the associated premium seat override review. No one spoke. She started with Marcus's case. The findings were direct. Marcus held a valid assignment for 1C. Charles held 2A. No safety, disability, equipment, balance, or operational need required a reassignment. Rebecca asked Marcus to move after confirming both seat assignments. Daniel escalated the request and created a disruptive passenger entry containing statements unsupported by witness accounts and system records. Owen later altered the category and narrative without conducting an independent review or preserving the correction within the visible case history. Marcus listened without satisfaction. Facts sounded smaller when read in numbered findings. That was probably good. Small enough to examine, large enough to matter. Helen moved to the prior cases. The 6 overrides had involved 5 passengers. 4 had been moved after premium customers objected to seat assignments. 1 had received compensation after refusing. 1 had been reassigned before boarding and never entered the disputed seat. 3 later complained about unfair treatment. 2 explicitly raised possible racial bias. None of those complaints had triggered a comparison against prior incidents involving the same premium profile code. Aaron spoke next. The review found no written policy authorizing staff to displace confirmed passengers for preference alone. Daniel shifted in his chair. The problem was informal practice, Aaron continued. Frontline employees had learned that certain high-value complaints could be avoided by moving the passenger judged more likely to accept compensation. Marcus stared at the screen. He judged more likely. Clean language again. Aaron did not leave it there. In practice, that judgment was inconsistent, undocumented, and vulnerable to bias. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. Helen then read the actions. Daniel would remain off passenger-facing duty pending a formal disciplinary process. Owen's access to customer incident files would stay suspended during a separate integrity review. Rebecca would receive discipline for participating in an unsupported reassignment and failing to stop the escalation after verifying the seat assignments. Her later cooperation and preservation of the preliminary report would be considered, but would not erase the earlier conduct. Marcus felt something loosen when Helen said that. No saint, no scapegoat. Just responsibility. Then came the system changes. Manual seat overrides based solely on loyalty preference were prohibited. Any displacement of a confirmed passenger would require a documented operational category. Complaints alleging unequal treatment would be cross-checked against repeated employee, customer profile, and exception code patterns. Customer recovery staff could no longer revise incident narratives without leaving the original text visible in the audit record. Helen finished and looked toward Marcus. Mr. Reed, is there anything you believe we have failed to address at this stage? Marcus looked down at the boarding pass beside his laptop. He thought about Maya, about 5 other people whose mornings had ended with miles, credits, apologies, and separate files. Yes, Helen waited. Contact them. We are, not with a generic apology. Aaron nodded. Marcus continued. Tell each person their complaint was reopened because the company found a pattern. Let them decide whether they want to participate further. Helena wrote it down. That will be done. Marcus leaned back. He had expected to want more. He didn't. After the call, he walked outside. Boston air cut through his coat. He stood near the curb while traffic moved past and called Maya before school. She answered, whispering, I'm technically supposed to be putting my phone away. Then I'll be fast. Did they fix it? Marcus watched a city bus pull toward the corner. He started. That sounds like a dad answer. It is. Did you get your seat? Yes. Did they clear the plane because you noticed the broken wire thing? Yes. Did the other people get their complaints reopened? Marcus smiled. Yes, Maya considered all of that. Then it sounds fixed enough for today. The school bell rang through her phone. You go. Love you. Love you too. The call ended. Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket. A new email arrived before he reached the corner. Not from Northstar, from Aaron Bell. One of the reopened passengers has asked to speak with you. Not about Flight Force 1 team. About a different exception code she saw in her case file. Marcus stopped walking. He read it again. The seat dispute was over. His record was clear. The override practice had been suspended. The people responsible were facing the processes their roles required. This was something else. Marcus looked up as the pedestrian signal changed. Then he crossed the street. Marcus did not call the reopened passenger that morning. He waited until after Halcyon finished its follow-up review. That choice surprised him. 24 hours earlier, he would have opened the message immediately. He would have wanted the next fact, the next explanation, the next piece of a system he could take apart and understand. Now he wanted to finish one thing before beginning another. At 4:20 that afternoon, Priya dropped a thin certification binder on his desk. Final clarification accepted. Marcus looked up. All of it. She pulled out the chair opposite him. Congratulations. You can stop changing slide 12 at 2 in the morning. I changed it once. You changed it 4 times. You have no proof. I have version history. Marcus laughed. The joke landed differently after Atlanta. Priya seemed to realize that too. Her smile faded. You okay? Marcus looked at the binder. Hal's emergency cabin system had passed the review phase he had spent 11 months preparing for. Final certification testing would begin in 6 weeks. He should have been thinking about connector tolerances and test schedules. Instead, seat 1C still sat somewhere behind his ribs. I think so. Priya nodded. She did not ask him to explain. Marcus appreciated that. His phone rang at 4:37. Helen Park. He stepped into the hallway and answered. We issued the final findings, she said. Marcus stopped beside a window. Your complaint has been sustained. He waited. Helen continued. The company found the reassignment request unsupported by policy, the escalation inappropriate, and the initial incident narrative inaccurate. Marcus looked down at the traffic 6 floors below. Daniel, 3 weeks suspension without pay, removal from in-flight supervisory duties for 6 months, mandatory retraining, and a final disciplinary warning. His return depends on completing the review requirements. Marcus absorbed that. No instant firing, no dramatic collapse. Consequences tied to what he had actually done. Owen? Dismissed. Marcus looked up. Helen explained before he could ask. Not for the seat dispute itself. The records integrity investigation found he had altered 9 customer incident files over 18 months without preserving required correction notes. He involved complaints against high-value customers. That changed the weight of it. So it wasn't only mine. No. Rebecca? Written discipline. 2 weeks removed from premium cabin assignments. She'll complete bias interruption and escalation training before returning to that service level. Marcus thought about her taking the screenshot. Then about her asking him to move after knowing the seat was his. It sounds fair. Helen paused. She asked me to give you something. Marcus frowned. What? An apology, written. I told her I wouldn't forward it without asking you. Marcus looked through the glass wall. Priya was back at her desk. People moved between conference rooms carrying coffee, binders, laptops. Normal life. I'll send it. I will. Helen continued. Charles Whitmore's preference privileges were removed. He keeps his loyalty status, but no profile note can override assigned seating. He has also been informed that further attempts to pressure employees into displacing another passenger may affect his status. Marcus smiled faintly. Charles would survive seat 2A, and the other passengers. 4 agreed to reopened reviews. 1 declined further contact. Marcus nodded. The 3 who complained previously will receive corrected case findings and refunds for the affected segments. Compensation is being handled separately. What about the override system? The temporary hold is now permanent policy. Marcus said nothing. Helen read the language. No confirmed passenger may be displaced solely to satisfy another customer's seating preference, loyalty tier, or informal service note. Any involuntary reassignment requires a documented operational, safety, accessibility, equipment, or regulatory basis. Marcus let out a breath. That sentence mattered more to him than Charles losing a privilege. Helen was not finished. The complaint system will also flag repeated exception codes for human review. Same passenger profile, same employee group, same station, same type of allegation. The system won't decide discrimination occurred. It will stop us from pretending repeated incidents are unrelated. Marcus smiled. That's better. I thought you'd say that. They spoke for another minute. Then Helen said, Your customer record is officially clear. The original incident entry remains sealed in the compliance file with the findings attached. It won't appear as an active passenger behavior record. Marcus looked at the worn boarding pass on his desk. That loop finally closed. Thank you. Helen was quiet. We should have believed the ticket the first time. Marcus did not rescue her from the sentence. Yes, they ended the call. At 5:12, Rebecca's apology arrived. Marcus opened it expecting corporate language. It wasn't. Rebecca wrote that she had seen a high-tier customer complain, anticipated the complaint reaching management, and decided moving Marcus would create less trouble for her. She admitted she had never asked herself why she expected Marcus to accept inconvenience more easily than Charles. Then came the line Marcus read twice. I kept telling myself I was managing conflict. I was choosing who had to absorb it. He closed the email. No forgiveness ceremony, no reply, telling her everything was fine. It wasn't, but the apology had named the act without hiding behind intention. For now, that was enough. Marcus flew home the following morning. Different aircraft, different crew. Seat 7D, economy. He had booked late. The man beside him slept through most of the flight with his mouth open. Marcus considered that a luxury. No one questioned his ticket. No one looked surprised when he sat down. No one cared what he did for a living. 2 hours of glorious irrelevance. Denise picked him up in Atlanta. Maya was waiting in the passenger seat. The moment Marcus opened the back door to throw in his bag, she twisted around. Hero. Absolutely not. You found an electrical problem. Maintenance found it. You found the water. I noticed water. You saved everybody. They were already on the ground. Maya narrowed her eyes. You're ruining this story. Denise laughed from the driver's seat. Been doing that his whole life. Marcus climbed in. Maya handed him something. His science project folder. On the cover, she had drawn a crude airplane in blue marker. Above it, look up. Marcus stared at the words. What is this? My new safety rule. That is not how aviation safety works. It worked for you. Denise pulled away from the curb. Marcus shook his head, smiling. At home that evening, he pinned the boarding pass from Flight Force 1 to the corkboard above his desk. Not as a trophy. Beside it, he placed Halcyon's final certification notice. 2 pieces of paper from the same 48 hours. One had proved where he was allowed to sit. The other proved what years of work had built. Maya appeared in the doorway. You keeping that ticket forever? Probably not forever. Why keep it now? Marcus looked at seat 1C printed near the center. Because it reminds me the ticket was enough before anybody knew who I was. Maya leaned against the doorframe. It sounds like another dad sentence. It probably is. She disappeared toward the kitchen. Marcus smiled and turned off the desk lamp. His phone buzzed once. The message from Aaron about the reopened passenger was still there. Marcus opened it now. The woman's name was Tanya Brooks. Her old complaint was closed. Her refund had been approved. Her seat case was finished. But while reviewing the reopened file, Tanya had noticed a different internal exception code attached to her account, one that had nothing to do with Charles Whitmore or Flight Force 1 scene. Aaron had included one sentence from her request. I don't need Marcus Reed to fight this for me. I want to know if he can help me understand what I'm looking at. Marcus read it once, then he looked toward the kitchen where Maya and Denise were arguing about whether cereal counted as dinner. He did not call Tanya that night. He answered with 3 words. Tomorrow works. Send it. Then Marcus put the phone down and went to eat with his family.